What if the greatest threat to your empire wasn't your competitors, but the people sitting across from you at the boardroom table? Damian Cole learned this truth at 30,000 feet, watching his private jet's engine explode into a fireball over the Adirondacks. The crash investigators would later call it mechanical failure, but Damian knew better. Someone wanted him dead, and they were probably sitting in his corner office right now, checking stock prices and calculating their next move. As the paramedics strapped him to a gurney, pain shooting through his spine, Damian made a decision that would either save him or destroy everything he'd built. He would become the ghost in his own machine, and he would start by convincing everyone that the fall had broken more than just his body. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and betrayal. Marcus stood at the foot of Damian's bed, his face arranged in perfect concern, but his eyes kept flicking to his phone, probably monitoring the company's stock price, which had dropped 17% since news of the crash broke. Elena stood beside him, her expression appropriately somber, but Damian noticed her left hand resting on Marcus's lower back, a gesture too familiar for mere colleagues. The doctors had given Damian the prognosis an hour ago: severe spinal trauma, possible permanent paralysis, months of rehabilitation ahead if he was lucky. But Damian had felt his toes curl under the sheets when they'd run their tests. His body was damaged, yes, but not destroyed. And in that gap between reality and perception, he saw his opportunity. "The board is handling everything," Marcus said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey and twice as dangerous. "You just focus on recovery, brother." Brother. The word tasted like poison in the air. Damian let his hand tremble as he reached for the water cup, playing the part of the broken titan. "Thank you," he whispered, voice cracking just enough. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Sophia Chen arrived on his third night in the hospital, introduced by the head nurse as his new private care specialist. But when she helped him into the wheelchair for the first time, she leaned close and whispered 6 words that changed everything. "I know you can still walk." Damian's blood ran cold until she continued. "And I can help you find out who tried to kill you." She wasn't just a nurse. Former CIA analyst, retired after an operation went sideways in Berlin, now freelancing for people who needed problems solved quietly. Damian's lawyer, one of the 3 people in the world he still trusted, had hired her. That night, Sophia showed him the first piece of evidence: an encrypted email chain she'd intercepted between Marcus and an aircraft maintenance company in New Jersey, dated 2 weeks before the crash. The emails discussed mechanical adjustments and timeline acceleration. Damian stared at the messages until they blurred, his hands shaking with genuine rage now. "How deep does this go?" he asked. Sophia's expression was grim. "Deeper than you want to know. But if you want the truth, you'll have to play dead a little longer." "Can you do that? Could you watch your life's work being stolen piece by piece, knowing you had the power to stop it but choosing to wait, to watch, to gather evidence instead of striking back?" Damian wheeled himself to the penthouse window as dawn broke over Manhattan, the city that had watched him rise from nothing to everything. His phone buzzed with sympathetic messages from people he'd crushed on his way up, their fake concern barely masking their satisfaction at his fall. Victoria had texted too. "We need to talk about us." Translation: she was already gone, probably into Marcus's arms if Sophia's surveillance was correct. The news networks were running speculative pieces about Cole Corp's future, with financial analysts suggesting that new leadership might be necessary. They were already writing his obituary while he was still breathing. Damian pressed his hand against the cold glass, feeling the city's pulse below. He had built an empire by being ruthless, by never showing weakness, by striking first and asking questions never. Now he would learn a different kind of power, the power of invisibility, of patience, of becoming underestimated. But as he watched a dark sedan pull up to his building, Marcus arriving for their friendly check-in, Damian wondered if he was setting a trap for them, or for himself. The boardroom had never felt so much like a throne room with the king absent. Marcus stood where Damian used to stand, his presentation smooth and rehearsed, painting a picture of Cole Corp's future that somehow didn't include its founder. "Given Damian's condition," Marcus said, his voice carrying just the right amount of regret, "we need to discuss interim leadership structures that can provide stability during this uncertain time." Elena nodded, her fingers dancing across her tablet. "The institutional investors are getting nervous. We've had 3 major accounts request reassurance calls this week alone." Richard Blackwell, who'd been on Cole Corp's board since the beginning, cleared his throat. "I've known Damian for 15 years. Built this company from a logistics startup in a Brooklyn warehouse to a $10 billion empire. You're talking about pushing him out before he's even out of the wheelchair. The room went silent. Marcus's smile never wavered. Not pushing out, Richard. Protecting. Protecting him, protecting the company, protecting our shareholders. Damien would want us to be pragmatic. He taught us that. But Damien was watching every word through the hidden camera Sophia had installed in the boardroom's emergency exit sign 3 days ago. His home office had been transformed into a surveillance command center, monitors displaying feeds from 17 cameras positioned throughout Colcorp's headquarters. Legal? Absolutely not. Necessary? Without question. There, Sophia said, pointing to the screen showing Marcus's private office. Watch this. The feed showed Marcus and Elena, alone now, their body language transforming the moment the door closed. Elena moved into his arms, their kiss hungry and familiar. This wasn't new. How long? Damien asked, his voice hollow. From what I can tell, about 8 months. Started at the Singapore conference last March. 8 months. While Damien had been finalizing the merger with TechFlow Solutions, while he'd been working 18-hour days to close the Australian expansion, while he'd been planning his wedding to Victoria. 8 months of lies, of secret glances across conference tables, of betrayal wrapped in loyalty's clothing. Keep watching, Sophia said quietly. On the monitor, Marcus ended a call and turned to Elena. James says the medical incompetence clause in the corporate charter is airtight. If we can get 3 doctors to sign off that Damien can't perform his duties, the board can vote him out with a simple majority. Elena looked up from the documents spread across his desk. Damien recognized his own corporate charter, the one he'd drafted 12 years ago, now being weaponized against him. And you have the votes. Marcus's laugh was cold. Richard will fold once we show him the numbers. The others were my people from the start. Damien never noticed because he was too busy being brilliant and ruthless. He never considered that we might learn from watching him. What about Sophia? The nurse. She's always around him. A nurse, Marcus dismissed. What's she going to do, take his blood pressure aggressively? They both laughed. Damien's hands gripped his wheelchair's armrests so hard his knuckles went white. Sophia placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Control. You need control right now. But the surveillance revealed more than just corporate betrayal. That evening, Damien had agreed to meet Victoria for dinner. She'd insisted they needed to talk about their future. He arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, positioning himself so he could see her entrance. When Victoria walked in, she was everything he'd fallen for. Elegant, poised, breathtaking. She was also wearing the diamond bracelet Marcus had bought at Cartier 3 weeks ago. Sophia had found the receipt in his office trash. Damien, Victoria said, sitting across from him, her voice soft with manufactured sympathy. You look tired. Paralysis is exhausting, he replied, keeping his voice weak, defeated. Who knew? She had the grace to look uncomfortable. I've been thinking about us. About our future. About what you need right now. What I need, Damien repeated slowly, is someone who stands by me. Someone who doesn't see a wheelchair and run. Victoria's eyes glistened. Actual tears or performance, he couldn't tell anymore. That's not fair. You're not the same man I agreed to marry. That man was powerful, unstoppable, alive. Now you're broken? Victoria reached across the table, and for a moment Damien thought she might take his hand. Instead, she removed her engagement ring, 3 carats, princess cut, flawless, and placed it on the white tablecloth between them. I'm sorry, she whispered. I can't be strong enough for both of us. Marcus has been helping me through this, and She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Through the doorway to the main dining room, Damien could see Marcus sitting at the bar, checking his phone, waiting. This wasn't spontaneous heartbreak. This was orchestrated, planned, timed. They'd probably discussed it in bed, between kisses, deciding when and how to remove every piece of support Damien had left. I understand, Damien said, his voice cracking in a way that wasn't entirely fake. You need to do what's right for you. Victoria stood, leaning down to kiss his forehead. A gesture so condescending it took everything in him not to grab her wrist and show her exactly how functional his legs were. I hope you find peace, she said, then walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Marcus met her at the bar. Their eyes met for just a second, triumph and relief passing between them. They thought they'd won. They thought Damien was finished. Damien sat alone at the table, his untouched meal growing cold, his reflection in the darkened window showing a broken man in a wheelchair. But behind that reflection, behind those eyes, something else was growing. Not revenge. That was too simple, too expected. Something colder, more patient, more devastating. How far would you go to uncover a truth that might destroy you? For Damian Cole, the answer was further than he ever imagined. Through physical therapy sessions where he pretended his legs wouldn't respond, through humiliating medical examinations where doctors discussed his condition as if he weren't there, through watching his own memorial video that Cole Corp's PR team had prepared just in case. 3 weeks after the crash, Damian had perfected the art of being invisible in plain sight. The physical therapy sessions were particularly brutal, not because of the exercises, but because of the acting required. "Try to put weight on your right leg, Mr. Cole," the therapist encouraged, her voice professionally optimistic. Damian grimaced, shaking his head, his body trembling with effort, while his muscles screamed to move, to stand, to run from this prison of deception he'd built. In the mirror, he caught Sophia's eye. She gave the slightest nod, the signal that they had company listening. Probably Marcus's people, checking to ensure Damian's disability was authentic. Let them watch. Let them believe. But Sophia was building a case that went beyond corporate betrayal. That night, Damian watched through his monitors as she met someone in the parking garage beneath Coalcorp headquarters. A meeting she hadn't told him about. The figure handed her an envelope, their conversation too quiet for even the enhanced microphones to catch. When Sophia returned to the penthouse 2 hours later, she found Damian waiting in the dark, not even pretending to be in his wheelchair. "Who was he?" Damian asked. Sophia didn't flinch at finding him standing. "Someone from my past. Someone who specializes in finding things people don't want found." "And what did he find?" She opened the envelope, spreading. Photographs across his desk. Financial records, offshore accounts, property deeds. "Marcus didn't start planning your removal 3 weeks ago, Damian. He started 3 years ago. The crash wasn't plan A. It was plan C." Damian's blood turned to ice as Sophia walked him through the evidence. 3 years ago, Marcus had opened his first offshore account in the Caymans. Not illegal by itself, but suspicious given his salary. 2 years ago, he'd purchased a property in Victoria's name in the Hamptons, funding it through a shell corporation. 18 months ago, he'd started recruiting board members, taking them to lunches at Persay and Daniel, slowly poisoning them against Damian with carefully crafted concerns about leadership sustainability and founder syndrome. "He studied you," Sophia said quietly. "Learned from you. You taught him how to be ruthless by being ruthless to everyone else. He just decided to apply those lessons to the teacher." Damian sank into his chair. Not his wheelchair, his actual desk chair, his legs functioning perfectly. The jet crash. Harder to prove, but the evidence points in one direction. The maintenance company has connections to a private security firm. That firm has connections to Marcus through 2 shell corporations. "He tried to kill me." The words felt unreal even as Damian spoke them. This was Marcus, his best friend. The guy who'd been at his side since the beginning, who'd celebrated every victory, who'd sworn loyalty over expensive whiskey in countless late-night strategy sessions. "He tried to kill me, and when that didn't work, he decided to take everything anyway." Sophia pulled up another file on her tablet. This one a video compilation she'd assembled from old Coalcorp security footage. Damian watched his own history play out. Marcus beside him during the first major client meeting that saved the company from bankruptcy. Marcus working through the night to finalize the logistics software that became their breakthrough product. Marcus celebrating when Coalcorp went public, tears in his eyes as the stock price soared. "When did he change?" Damian asked, knowing the question was pointless. "People don't change," Sophia replied. "They reveal. And they choose." The video continued. Damian saw the moments differently now. Marcus's glances lasting too long when Damian made decisions, his smile tight when Damian took credit for their joint successes, his casual suggestions that were actually carefully planted manipulations. The signs had always been there. Damian had just been too focused on building his empire to notice the termites in the foundation. The next morning, James Porter arrived at Damian's penthouse at 7 a.m. sharp, holding a leather folder like a weapon. "Damian," James said, his voice carrying none of the warmth it once had. "The board has requested that you undergo a comprehensive medical and psychological evaluation. It's standard procedure given your condition and your role in the company." Damian, back in his wheelchair, playing his part, let his hands tremble as he reached for his coffee. "An evaluation?" "James, I'm recovering. The doctors said it would take time." The doctors also said your prognosis was uncertain. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. Coal Corp needs stable leadership. James opened the folder, pulling out documents. This is a request for temporary medical leave. Marcus would assume operational control for 6 months while you focus on recovery. It's actually quite generous. Generous, Damien repeated, his voice flat. Removing me from my own company is generous? No one's removing you. This is temporary protection for everyone involved, including you. If you refuse, the board will have to pursue other options. Options that might not be as compassionate. There it was. The threat wrapped in concern, the knife hidden in the bouquet. Refuse, and they'd declare him incompetent outright, dragging him through public medical examinations and court proceedings that would humiliate him and crater the company's stock price. If I sign this, Damien said slowly, what assurances do I have that this is actually temporary? James's smile was thin. You have my word. Marcus's word. The board's word. Words, Damien said. The most worthless currency in business. Then you have the contract itself, with clear termination clauses tied to your medical recovery. It's all very standard. Nothing about this was standard. This was a coup dressed in legal language. Execution performed with fountain pens instead of firing squads. But Sophia had been clear. Sign it, give them rope, let them think they'd won. The evidence wasn't complete yet. They needed more time. Damien reached for the pen, his hand shaking. Partly performance, partly genuine fury. You know what the most dangerous thing in the world is, James? What's that? A man with nothing left to lose. Damien signed the documents, each stroke of the pen feeling like cutting his own throat. Tell Marcus he won. Tell him I hope he enjoys my office. And tell him. Damien looked up, meeting James's eyes. Tell him I always knew he was smarter than he pretended to be. What does it feel like to watch someone else living your life? Marcus moved into Damien's office 72 hours after the documents were signed, and he didn't waste time pretending to be a temporary replacement. Sophia's cameras captured everything. Marcus behind Damien's desk, Marcus laughing with board members in Damien's conference room, Marcus standing where Damien used to stand during company-wide video calls, announcing a new era of collaborative leadership for Coal Corp. The company's stock actually rose 4% on the news. The market loved Marcus's message of stability and forward-thinking innovation. They loved that the unpredictable, ruthless Damien Cole was finally out of the picture. Financial analysts called it a necessary evolution. One Bloomberg piece titled The Price of Genius. When founders become liabilities, used Damien as a cautionary tale. He read it on his tablet while sitting in his wheelchair at home, Sophia moving around the penthouse, maintaining the illusion for anyone who might be watching. They're rewriting history, Damien said quietly, making it seem like the crash was the best thing that could have happened to Coal Corp. But Marcus's triumph was giving Damien something more valuable than public sympathy, access. The more comfortable Marcus became, the sloppier he got. Sophia had expanded their surveillance network, installing monitoring software on 17 company devices, intercepting emails through a server vulnerability Damien himself had created years ago as a security backdoor. Now that backdoor was his window into the betrayal. Tonight's feed is particularly interesting, Sophia said, pulling up footage from a private dining club in Tribeca where Marcus, Elena, and Richard Blackwell were meeting after hours. Damien watched as Marcus ordered a bottle of Petrus, $2,000, charged to the company corporate account. They toasted, laughing. Richard caved, Sophia narrated. Agreed to vote for the permanent leadership change when it comes up next month. Marcus promised him a seat on the new advisory board and a consulting contract worth $3 million annually. Bribed with my money, Damien said. Using my company to buy loyalty that was supposed to be mine. There's more. Sophia pulled up another screen, financial transfers from Coal Corp's accounts. Elena's been redirecting research and development funds into a subsidiary that she controls personally. About $40 million so far. Marcus knows and he's covering it. The public narrative was that Damien had retired to focus on his health, grateful for his team's support during his difficult recovery. The reality was that he'd become a ghost, disconnected from everything he'd built. His calendar, once packed with meetings, negotiations, and strategy sessions that dictated his identity, now held only physical therapy appointments and medical check-ins. People stopped calling. At first there were messages, board members checking in, business contacts expressing sympathy, even competitors offering professional courtesy. But as weeks passed and Damien maintained his silence, playing the part of the broken titan hiding from public life, the calls stopped. One evening, Damien scrolled through his contacts. Hundreds of names, relationships built over 2 decades of business. He called 5 people randomly. 3 didn't answer. 1 answered and clearly didn't remember who he was. The 5th was Marcus. Damien. Marcus's voice was warm, concerned. How are you doing, brother? I've been meaning to visit, but things have been absolutely insane at the office. You know how it is. I know exactly how it is, Damien replied. I built it, remember? An awkward pause. Of course. Listen, I have to jump on another call, but let's have dinner soon, okay? Victoria asks about you. The lie was delivered so smoothly. Victoria hadn't asked about him once. Sophia had been monitoring her too, watching as she moved into Marcus's Tribeca loft, wearing new diamonds, attending charity galas as Marcus's girlfriend. Their relationship had gone public 2 weeks ago. The announcement photo showed them at the Met Gala, Marcus and Tom Ford, Victoria and Valentino, both glowing with success. The caption read, "Finding love after tragedy." But Damien needed to see it with his own eyes. Against Sophia's advice, he slipped out of the penthouse one rainy Thursday night, dressed in dark clothes and a cap pulled low. No wheelchair, no performance, just him walking the Manhattan streets like a man returning from the dead. He found them at 11 Madison Park, sitting at a corner table, Marcus's hand over Victoria's, both laughing at something private. They looked happy. That was the knife that cut deepest. Not that they'd betrayed him, but that they'd found something real in his destruction. Or maybe that was a performance too. Maybe they were just 2 excellent actors playing the role of soulmates. Damien watched through the rain-streaked window for 10 minutes, and in that time, he saw Marcus check his phone 3 times. Business never stopped, even during romance. Victoria seemed not to notice or care. She was transformed, not the anxious, status-conscious woman who'd left Damien, but someone relaxed, confident. Marcus had that effect. He made people believe in his version of reality. Beautiful couple, someone said beside him. Damien turned to see an elderly man with an umbrella, also watching the restaurant. Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. Just observing the beautiful people. That's Marcus Webb, isn't it? The tech CEO? Lucky guy. Very lucky, Damien agreed. He has everything. Well, you know what they say, nothing lasts forever. The old man smiled and walked away, leaving Damien standing in the rain, those words echoing. Nothing lasts forever. Not empires. Not friendships. Not love. And certainly not theft disguised as succession. The next morning, Damien met someone who would change the entire game. An investigative journalist named Sarah Chun who'd been following Cole Corp for a profile piece on Marcus's remarkable leadership transition. Sophia had made the introduction through encrypted channels. Mr. Cole, Sarah said, studying him across the coffee shop table in Brooklyn, far from Manhattan's watching eyes. I have to say, for a man who supposedly can't walk, you're moving pretty well. I'm having a good day, Damien replied. I have a lot of good days. Just not when people are watching. Sarah pulled out her tablet, showing him her research. I've been investigating Marcus Webb for 3 months. The more I dig, the less things add up. Offshore accounts that appear then disappear. Shell corporations with no clear business purpose. Board members who suddenly become very wealthy around the time of major company decisions. Sounds like circumstantial evidence. It would be, except I have emails. Encrypted communications between Marcus and someone at your aircraft maintenance company. Want to know what they discussed 2 days before your crash? Damien's blood ran cold as Sarah showed him the communications she'd uncovered. Timeline acceleration. Mechanical intervention. Problem elimination. The language was careful, coded, but the intention was clear. How did you get these? Damien asked. Better you don't know. The question is, what are you going to do with them? Why haven't you published this already? Sarah leaned back, studying him. Because half the story is missing. I know what Marcus did. I need to know why. I need to know who else was involved. And I need someone who can confirm the internal details that only a Cole Corp insider would know. You want to use me as a source. I want to tell the truth. You want justice. Maybe those things align. Damien considered her carefully. Sarah Chun was young, hungry, idealistic. Everything he'd stopped being years ago. She still believed that exposing corruption mattered. That truth was a weapon powerful enough to bring down empires. Maybe she was right. Or maybe she was naive. But she had evidence he couldn't get, and credibility he'd lost the moment he stepped away from Cole Corp. "If I help you," Damien said slowly, "it's not just my career on the line. It's my life. Marcus has already tried to kill me once." "I know. That's exactly why I need your help." Sarah pulled out a folder, thick with printed documents. "Because men like Marcus Webb don't stop at one murder. They're just getting started. When you've lost everything, you have nothing left to lose. And that's when you become truly dangerous." Damien set up his command center in an anonymous co-working space in the Flatiron district, paid for through one of his private accounts that Marcus didn't know existed. No more surveillance from home, no more pretending to be broken. This was his war room, and he was done being a ghost. "The financial discrepancies Elena created give us our opening," Sarah said, spreading documents across the conference table. $40 million redirected from R&D into her personal subsidiary over 18 months. That's embezzlement, plain and simple. Sophia pulled up another screen. "But if we expose Elena first, Marcus will throw her under the bus, claim he knew nothing, and walk away clean. We need to connect him directly to the theft. And to the crash," Damien added. "Everything or nothing. We hit them with everything at once, no warning, no mercy." Sarah looked at him carefully. "You understand what you're describing is mutually assured destruction, right? When this story breaks, Cole Corp's stock will crater. Thousands of employees will lose value in their retirement accounts. Investors will sue. The company you built might not survive." "Then maybe the company I built was never meant to last," Damien replied coldly. He stood before their evidence board, a old-school corkboard covered in photographs, documents, and red string connecting the conspiracy's web. Marcus and Elena at the center, lines radiating out to board members, shell corporations, offshore accounts, and finally, the aircraft maintenance company in New Jersey. "Sophia, what's our exposure on the crash investigation?" "The NTSB report is still months away from completion, but I have a contact inside who says they've found evidence of deliberate sabotage, hydraulic fluid contamination that shouldn't have been possible without internal access to the maintenance bay." "Can they testify?" "Not officially without risking their career. But they can leak the preliminary findings to the right journalist." All eyes turned to Sarah. "I have sources at the Times and the Journal who would run this story," Sarah said. "But you need to understand, once we pull this trigger, there's no going back. Marcus will come after you with everything he has. He'll call you a bitter ex-CEO trying to sabotage his successor. He'll question your mental state, weaponize your staged paralysis against you. This will get ugly." "Let them come," Damien said. "I've been preparing for this." That afternoon, Damien walked into the offices of Hartman and Associates, one of Manhattan's most feared litigation firms. He walked, not wheeled, into the senior partner's office, watching jaws drop as the supposedly paralyzed billionaire stood before them in a custom suit, every inch the titan they remembered. "Gentlemen, Miss Hartman," Damien said, taking his seat at the conference table. "I need you to file 3 separate lawsuits by the end of this week. Corporate fraud against Marcus Webb and Elena Frost. Attempted murder charges against parties to be named. And I need emergency injunctions freezing Cole Corp's board from making any structural changes to the company until these matters are resolved." David Hartman, 72 years old and legendary in corporate law, leaned back in his chair. "Damien, you understand that filing these suits will make you the most hated man in New York business circles? Your reputation. My reputation?" Damien laughed, the sound bitter. "My reputation is already destroyed. They made sure of that. Now I'm going to return the favor. And the fact that you've been faking paralysis for 2 months? That's going to be used against you. Let it. While they were calling me broken, I was documenting every crime they committed. While they were stealing my company, I was building a case that will put them in prison. I don't need their respect anymore. I need justice." The lawsuits hit like nuclear bombs on a Wednesday morning. Sarah's story broke simultaneously in the Wall Street Journal. Inside the plot to steal Cole Corp, how a CEO's inner circle tried to murder their way to power. Within an hour, Cole Corp's stock was in free fall, dropping 23% before trading was halted. The SEC announced an investigation. The FBI issued a statement saying they were reviewing serious allegations. And Marcus Webb's perfect world began to collapse. Sophia's cameras, still active in Cole Corp's headquarters, captured the emergency board meeting. Marcus stood at the head of the conference table, his composure cracking for the first time, sweat visible on his forehead. "These allegations are completely fabricated," Marcus said, his voice tight. Damian Cole is a bitter, potentially unstable man who can't accept that the company has moved on without him. Then explain the offshore accounts, Richard Blackwell demanded, his earlier loyalty evaporating now that federal investigations were involved. Explain the shell corporations. Explain why the Journal has encrypted emails with your signature discussing mechanical intervention 2 days before Damian's plane crashed. Those communications have been taken out of context. Elena cut in, her voice rising with panic. The context is that we're all going to prison if you don't fix this, Marcus. We had an agreement, Elena. We had an agreement when this was a clean transition. Not when the FBI is involved. Not when journalists are digging through our financial records. That night, Damian stood across the street from Colcorp headquarters, watching as his former empire burned. Media crews surrounded the building. Protesters had shown up, some supporting him, others condemning him for the fake paralysis. The building that had been his second home for 15 years now looked like a crime scene. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He knew who it was before he opened it. You've made your point. Can we talk? Marcus. Damian stared at the message for a long moment. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to let Marcus suffer without explanation or mercy. But another part, the part that remembered their friendship, that remembered building something from nothing together, needed answers. He texted back. Federal Plaza. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Bring your lawyer. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, alone. No lawyers. You owe me that much. They met in Battery Park instead, the cold December wind coming off the harbor, both men on separate benches, maintaining distance like the enemies they'd become. Marcus looked worse than Damian had ever seen him, unshaven, exhausted. The mask finally dropped. You've won, Marcus said without preamble. Is that what you wanted to hear? I didn't win anything. I just stopped you from stealing everything. Marcus laughed bitterly. Stealing? Damian, I built that company as much as you did. Every late night, every impossible deadline, every crisis, I was there. But it was always your name on the door, your face in the magazines, your vision everyone celebrated. So you tried to kill me? I didn't, Marcus stopped, rubbing his face. I didn't know about the plane. I swear to God I didn't know. Elena went behind my back with some contacts she had, trying to accelerate things. When I found out, it was already done. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect you to believe anything. But it's the truth. I wanted your company, Damian. I wanted your success. I even wanted Victoria. But I never wanted you dead. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a murderer. Damian studied his former friend, looking for the lie, for the performance. But all he saw was a broken man who'd gambled everything and lost. You destroyed everything we built together, Damian said quietly. Not for power or money, we had both. You destroyed it because you couldn't handle being the supporting character in my story. That's what makes this tragic, Marcus. You were never the villain in my story. You were my brother. When does justice become revenge? And when does revenge become poison? Damian watched through the one-way glass as FBI agents interrogated Marcus, his former friend now wearing federal custody orange, his hands cuffed to the table like a common criminal. This should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like watching a building he'd constructed collapse with people still inside. Mr. Webb, let's go through this again, Agent Morrison said, her voice professionally detached. The offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The shell corporations. The financial transfers. Walk us through your role in establishing these entities. Marcus's lawyer, a nervous public defender since Marcus's personal accounts had been frozen, tried to intervene. My client has already explained that these were legitimate business structures. Legitimate business structures that were used to embezzle $40 million from Colcorp's R&D budget, Morrison cut in. Mr. Webb, cooperating now could significantly reduce your sentencing. The FBI is prepared to offer immunity in exchange for testimony against Elena Frost and others involved in the aircraft sabotage. Marcus looked up at the mirror, as if he could see Damian watching. Could he sense his former friend's presence? What do you want to know? Marcus asked quietly. While Marcus was being interrogated, the FBI executed simultaneous raids across the city. Damian watched the news coverage from his war room. Federal agents carrying boxes from Marcus's Tribeca loft, from Elena's Upper West Side apartment, from Richard Blackwell's office. Victoria was shown briefly, being escorted from Marcus's apartment, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses, a far cry from the confident woman at the Met Gala. Sarah Chin sat beside Damien, her laptop open, monitoring social media and news feeds. You're trending #1 worldwide. The hashtag is #JusticeForCole. People are calling you a hero for exposing corporate corruption. Heroes don't fake paralysis and manipulate everyone around them, Damien said. Survivors do what they have to do, Sarah replied. You stayed alive long enough to expose the truth. That counts for something. But at what cost? Damien's phone had been ringing constantly. Journalists wanting interviews, producers offering book deals and movie rights, business schools requesting case study participation. Everyone wanted a piece of his tragedy, his betrayal, his revenge. Colcorp's stock is at an all-time low, Sophia reported, reviewing financial data. Investor lawsuits are piling up. The board has requested an emergency meeting to discuss bankruptcy protection. Damien had built Colcorp from nothing into a $10 billion empire over 15 years. Now, in less than 2 weeks, he destroyed it just as thoroughly. 15,000 employees wondering if they'd have jobs next month. Shareholders who'd trusted the company watching their investments evaporate. And for what? To prove he was right? To punish Marcus? That afternoon, Damien did something he'd been avoiding. He went to Brooklyn, to a modest apartment building in Sunset Park, and knocked on apartment 4B. The woman who answered was in her 50s, tired-looking, wearing scrubs with a hospital badge that identified her as Maria Martinez, RN. Mr. Cole, she said, surprise and uncertainty crossing her face. I wasn't expecting you. Mrs. Martinez, I'm sorry to come unannounced. I wanted to talk to you about your husband. Jorge Martinez had been a logistics coordinator at Colcorp for 12 years. He'd lost his job 2 days ago when the company started emergency layoffs. Jorge's not here, Maria said, her voice stiff. He's out looking for work. We have 3 kids, Mr. Cole. 3 kids who need to eat and go to school and have a roof over their heads. Jorge gave everything to your company, and now. She stopped, tears threatening. I'm sorry, Damien said, the words feeling inadequate. I know that doesn't mean much, but I am. This wasn't supposed to hurt people like Jorge. Then what was it supposed to do? You and Mr. Webb and all you billionaires fighting over money and power. You never think about the people actually doing the work, do you? The people who trusted that if they showed up every day and did their jobs, they'd be okay. She was right. In his war with Marcus, Damien had forgotten about the Jorges of the world, the thousands of employees whose lives depended on Colcorp's stability. Maria invited him in, not out of kindness, but because she wanted him to see what his war had cost. The apartment was small but clean, filled with evidence of a family's life. Children's artwork on the refrigerator, school photos on the walls, a Colcorp anniversary plaque celebrating Jorge's 10 years of service. He was so proud to work there, Maria said, following Damien's gaze to the plaque. He'd come home and tell our kids about the innovations you were making, the contracts you were winning. You were his hero, Mr. Cole. He believed in what you built. Past tense. Believed. Mrs. Martinez, I want to help. I can. Write a check? Throw money at us like that fixes everything. Her voice hardened. Jorge doesn't want charity from you. He wants his job back. He wants his dignity back. He wants his kids to understand that hard work and loyalty mean something. Damien had no answer for that. He'd been so focused on exposing Marcus's betrayal, on proving he was wronged, that he'd unleashed destruction that reached far beyond the boardroom. The company can recover, Damien said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. When this is sorted out legally, when new leadership is established. When? Mr. Cole, we don't have when. We have rent due next week and tuition payments and a son who needs surgery we've been saving for. Your when might as well be never for people like us. That night, Damien used his executive access code, still active, surprisingly, to enter Colcorp headquarters. The building was nearly empty, just a skeleton crew of security and a few employees working late, unaware their boss was walking the halls. The office that had once pulsed with energy, 15,000 people building something remarkable, now felt like a mausoleum. Desks sat abandoned, personal photos still on some, coffee cups left behind. Someone had written on a whiteboard, "We'll miss you all. Thank you for everything. Marketing team." Damien walked to his old office, Marcus's office now, technically, and stood in the doorway. Marcus had redecorated, removing Damien's minimalist aesthetic for something warmer, more personal. Photos of Victoria, awards from business magazines, that Petrus wine bottle preserved like a trophy. Evidence of a man trying to fill another man's shoes and finding they fit better than expected. I thought I'd find you here. Damien turned to see Sophia in the doorway, her expression concerned. How did you? I always know where you are. That's my job. She walked past him into the office, looking around. Sentimental journey? More like surveying the damage. They stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over Manhattan. Somewhere out there, Marcus was in federal custody. Elena was cooperating with investigators, throwing everyone under the bus to save herself. Richard Blackwell had resigned from 17 corporate boards. Victoria had disappeared, reportedly checked into a wellness retreat in California to avoid the media circus. Cole Corp, the company that had been Damien's purpose, his identity, his legacy, was dying. I'm not sure I'm the hero in this story anymore, Damien said quietly. You were never trying to be a hero, Sophia replied. You were trying to survive. There's a difference. I destroyed more than I saved. Jorge Martinez is unemployed because of me. Thousands like him. Pension funds that invested in Cole Corp have lost millions. Retirement accounts, college funds, people's futures. Gone because I needed to prove I was wrong. You were wronged. Marcus tried to steal your company. Elena helped. They might have tried to kill you. But what did my revenge accomplish? Marcus is in prison, yes. But so is the company. So are 15,000 employees' livelihoods. I burned down the house to kill the rats, and now everyone's homeless. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. So what now? You've exposed the truth. You've won in court. Where does Damien Cole go from here? That was the question, wasn't it? For 2 months, Damien had lived with singular purpose. Expose the betrayal, reclaim his dignity, make them pay. Now that he'd accomplished all of that, he felt hollower than when he was pretending to be paralyzed. Can you save something by destroying it? Or does destruction only ever lead to more destruction? The courtroom was standing room only when Damien took the witness stand. 6 weeks had passed since the FBI raids, 6 weeks of depositions and legal maneuvering and media circuses. Now came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Damien Cole, under oath, telling his story. Mr. Cole, the prosecutor began, a sharp woman in her 40s named Janet Reeves, please tell the court, in your own words, about the events of September 15th. The day your aircraft crashed in the Adirondacks. Damien took a breath, aware that every eye in the courtroom was on him. In the gallery, he could see Sarah with her notebook, Sophia in the back row, even Victoria. Why was she here? I was flying back from Boston after meeting with investors, Damien began. We were at cruising altitude when the hydraulics failed. The pilot did everything he could, but we went down hard. I sustained spinal injuries, broken ribs, internal trauma. The doctors told me I might never walk again. But you did walk again. When? I could feel my legs 3 days after the crash. The paralysis was never complete, but I chose to let everyone believe it was. Why? Reeves asked. Why deceive everyone about your condition? Because 3 hours after waking in the hospital, I noticed something that terrified me more than the crash. My CFO, Marcus Webb, and my COO, Elena Frost, standing at the foot of my bed. They weren't looking at me with concern. They were looking at me with opportunity. The gallery murmured. Reeves projected emails on the courtroom screen. The communications between Marcus and the maintenance company, the encrypted messages discussing timeline acceleration. When did you discover these communications? My associate Sophia Chin uncovered them approximately 1 week after the crash. That's when I realized the crash wasn't an accident. Someone wanted me gone, and they were already moving to take control of Cole Corp. Damien's testimony continued for 3 hours, walking the court through every detail. The fake paralysis, the surveillance operation, the discovery of embezzlement, the offshore accounts, the conspiracy to declare him incompetent. With each revelation, Marcus seemed to shrink further in his chair. When Reeves finally said no further questions, Marcus's defense attorney stood for cross-examination. David Klein was expensive, aggressive, and desperate to salvage something from the wreckage. Mr. Cole, Klein began, his tone sharp, you've told us quite a story about being the victim. But let's talk about what you actually did. You faked a disability. You manipulated everyone around you, doctors, nurses, board members, even your fiancé. You conducted illegal surveillance of your own company. You hacked into private communications. And now you want us to believe you're the hero. I never claimed to be a hero, Damien replied evenly. I claimed to be someone trying to stay alive and discover who tried to kill me. Or, and hear me out, You're a narcissist who couldn't handle being sidelined, so you created an elaborate conspiracy theory to justify destroying the people who were trying to help your company survive your incapacity. If they were trying to help, why did they embezzle $40 million? Alleged embezzlement. Not yet proven. Klein changed tactics, pulling up photographs of Damien in his wheelchair at various events: the hospital, therapy sessions, the dinner with Victoria. Look at these images, Mr. Cole. You sitting in that wheelchair, playing the victim while secretly recording everyone around you. You manipulated your fiancé's emotions. You manipulated the media. You manipulated this entire city into feeling sorry for you. And the moment you had enough ammunition, you burned it all down. Does that sound like justice to you, or revenge? The question hung in the courtroom. Damien met Klein's eyes steadily. It sounds like survival, Damien said quietly. Your client tried to have me killed. When that failed, he systematically stole my company using my own corporate charter against me. He seduced my fiancée. He turned my board against me. He erased me while I was still breathing. So yes, I fought back using every tool I had. I'm not proud of the deception, but I'm alive. And the truth is out. Klein switched to another image, an old photo of Damien and Marcus from Cole Corp's early days, both young and ambitious, arms around each other's shoulders, celebrating their first major contract. You two were brothers once, weren't you? Best friends. Partners. He was best man at your wedding. My first wedding, Damien corrected. Before that ended. Partners for 15 years. Built an empire together. Doesn't some part of you wonder if you misunderstood his intentions? If maybe he was trying to protect the company during your medical crisis, not steal it? Damien looked across the courtroom at Marcus, who met his gaze for the first time during the trial. For a moment, they were back in that Brooklyn warehouse, two guys with a dream and nothing to lose. Before the billions, before the betrayals, before they forgot why they started. I wanted to believe that, Damien said, his voice carrying through the silent courtroom. Every single day, I wanted to believe Marcus was trying to help. That there was some explanation that would make sense of everything. But the evidence doesn't lie, Mr. Klein. The offshore accounts don't lie. The emails discussing my aircraft maintenance don't lie. The financial transfers don't lie. Whatever Marcus and I were once, whatever friendship we had, he destroyed it when he chose to take instead of ask, to steal instead of earn, to betray instead of trust. Klein pressed on for another hour, but the damage was done. The evidence was overwhelming, the timeline clear, the conspiracy documented in a way that no cross-examination could dismantle. When Damien finally stepped down from the witness stand, he felt exhausted not from the testimony, but from the weight of speaking truth that would send his former friend to prison. During the lunch recess, Damien stepped outside the courthouse to find a media circus, cameras, reporters, protesters both supporting and condemning him. Sarah pushed through the crowd to reach him. You did well in there, she said. Kept your composure, stuck to facts. Doesn't feel like a victory. That's because it's not over, Sarah replied. The criminal trial is one thing. But Cole Corp is still bleeding. Stock down 60% from pre-crash levels. Bankruptcy protection filed last week. 15,000 employees waiting to see if they'll have jobs next month. You've proven Marcus and Elena were criminals. Now the question is, what are you going to do about the wreckage? A reporter pushed closer, microphone extended. Mr. Cole, will you be returning as CEO of Cole Corp? Another shouted, what about the employees? Do you take responsibility for their job losses? A protester held a sign. Billionaires playing games while workers starve. They weren't wrong. Damien had been so focused on legal vindication that he hadn't considered what came next. Marcus would go to prison. Elena would probably cut a deal. The conspiracy would be exposed, justice served. But Cole Corp would still be dying. The employees would still be unemployed. The damage would still be done. I need to make a statement, Damien said to Sarah. Not through lawyers. Not through press releases. Me directly to everyone affected by this. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You sure? Once you speak publicly, every word will be analyzed, weaponized, immortalized. There's no taking it back. I know. Set it up. I want to address Cole Corp's employees directly. Tomorrow. At the headquarters. Damien. Sophia started, concern evident. They're angry. Some of them blame you as much as Marcus. They should, Damien said. I let this happen. I built a company culture where power mattered more than people, where winning mattered more than loyalty. Marcus learned from watching me. He just took those lessons further than I intended. He looked up at the courthouse, where inside, the trial continued without him. I can't undo what's been done. But maybe I can start rebuilding something that matters more than revenge. Some words can build empires. Others can save souls. Damian Cole was about to discover which kind he still had left. The Cole Corp lobby had been transformed overnight into an auditorium. Sophia had arranged for the event to be live-streamed internally to all 15,000 employees worldwide, with media coverage from major networks. This wasn't going to be a carefully scripted PR moment. This was going to be raw, honest, and potentially career-ending. You don't have to do this, Sophia said for the 10th time that morning, watching workers set up camera equipment. You could issue a statement, let the lawyers handle everything, distance yourself from the bankruptcy proceedings. These people deserve to hear from me, Damian replied. Not from lawyers or PR teams or the board. From the person who started this company and then burned it down to prove a point. Sarah Chin arrived with coffee, looking concerned. The media is already spinning narratives. Some are calling this your redemption tour. Others are saying it's a narcissist's last performance. What do you want it to be? The truth, Damian said. For once, just the truth. By 9 a.m., the lobby was packed. Current employees sat in the chairs, the ones still employed anyway. The rest stood in the back, those who'd been laid off but came anyway, wanting answers. Among the crowd, Damian recognized faces. Department heads, line workers, people he'd passed in hallways for years without really seeing. At 10 a.m. sharp, Damian walked to the podium. No introduction, no warm-up act. He stood before 15,000 current and former employees, plus millions watching online, and began to speak. My name is Damian Cole. I founded Cole Corp 17 years ago in a Brooklyn warehouse with $5,000, a laptop, and a dream of revolutionizing logistics technology. Today, that company is worth less than when I started, and that's on me. The bluntness silenced any remaining conversations. Damian continued without notes, without teleprompter, just speaking from the place where regret and responsibility lived. You've all heard the story by now. The plane crash, the betrayal, the fake paralysis, the conspiracy, the lawsuits. You've watched it play out in the media like some billionaire soap opera, entertaining to everyone except the people actually affected, which is you. He paused, letting that sink in. I stood on this same spot 7 years ago when we went public, and I told you that Cole Corp was more than a company. It was a family. I told you that if you trusted me, if you worked hard and believed in our mission, we'd build something remarkable together. And you did trust me. You worked 80-hour weeks. You missed your kids' recitals and your parents' birthdays. You believed. And I betrayed that trust. I didn't betray you by faking paralysis or conducting surveillance. I betrayed you long before that. I built a company culture where winning was everything, where being ruthless was praised, where loyalty meant agreeing with me, and disagreement meant you weren't a culture fit. I taught everyone around me that power and profit mattered more than people. Is it any surprise that Marcus Webb learned those lessons and applied them to me? In the crowd, Damian saw heads nodding. Some people looked angry still. Others seemed to be listening with something like understanding. When Marcus and others tried to take Cole Corp from me, I could have handled it differently. I could have been transparent with all of you. I could have fought it publicly, brought you into the process. Instead, I chose manipulation and deception because those were the tools I was comfortable with. And in destroying Marcus, I destroyed the company you all built. The layoffs, the stock collapse, the bankruptcy filing. That's not all Marcus's fault. That's mine too. Behind him on the screen, footage played from Cole Corp's history. Product launches, charity events, team celebrations. All the moments that had made the company more than just a business. All the moments Damian had been too focused on the next deal, the next acquisition, the next victory to fully appreciate. Jorge Martinez worked for Cole Corp for 12 years. Logistics coordinator, Brooklyn Distribution Center. Never missed a day. Raised 3 kids while showing up every single day to help build this company. Jorge lost his job 3 weeks ago in the first round of layoffs, and it's my fault. Not because I'm not a good logistics coordinator. He was excellent. But because I was so focused on revenge that I didn't protect the people who actually made this company work. Damian saw Maria Martinez in the crowd. She'd come after all. Their eyes met briefly. There are thousands of Jorges here. Thousands of people who trusted that if they did their job well, they'd be okay. And I let you all down. Not just by fighting with Marcus, but by building a company where executives could steal $40 million without anyone noticing. By creating a culture where people were afraid to speak up about problems. By prioritizing my ego over your livelihoods. The room was silent now, the kind of silence that comes when people are actually listening instead of waiting to react. I can't undo what's been done. Marcus is facing criminal charges. Elena is cooperating with prosecutors. The company is in bankruptcy protection. But here's what I can do. I can tell you the truth about what comes next. Damien clicked a remote, and the screen behind him changed to show a presentation. Numbers, charts, plans. I've spent the last 2 weeks working with bankruptcy attorneys, investment banks, and employee advocacy groups on a restructuring plan. Here's what I'm proposing. First, I'm waiving any claim to my personal shares in Coal Corp. They'll be transferred to an employee stock ownership plan. That's approximately 15% of the company, divided among everyone who's been here more than 1 year. Murmurs spread through the crowd. That was worth hundreds of millions if the company recovered. Second, I'm personally funding a severance and retraining program for everyone laid off during this crisis. It's not enough. Nothing can replace the security you've lost, but it's something. $60,000 per person, plus career counseling and job placement services for the next year. More murmurs, louder now. Third, I'm proposing a complete restructuring of Coal Corp's leadership. Not me coming back as CEO. I've proven I'm not trustworthy with that much unchecked power. But a new model. A CEO accountable to a board that includes employee representatives, customer advocates, and community leaders. A company that actually lives up to the values we claim to have. On the screen, the details appeared, organizational charts, financial projections, timelines. It was real, not just promises. But here's the catch, Damien continued. This only works if you want it to work. I can't save Coal Corp alone. I couldn't build it alone 17 years ago, and I certainly can't fix it alone now. This requires every person in this room, everyone watching online, to decide. Is this company worth saving? Not the version Marcus wanted, and not the version I built. But something new. Something better. Something that actually puts people before profits, that treats employees like partners, that measures success by more than stock price. He paused, looking out at the faces staring back at him. Some hostile, some hopeful, all waiting. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I definitely don't deserve your trust. But maybe if we work together, we can build something worthy of both. Or maybe this is the end, and Coal Corp becomes a cautionary tale in business school textbooks about what happens when founders lose their way. Either way, I wanted you to hear it from me. I'm sorry. For the betrayal, for the manipulation, for caring more about winning than about the people who made winning possible. I'm sorry, and I'm here to help fix it if you'll let me. Damien stepped back from the podium. No dramatic exit, no music, no applause. Just silence as 15,000 people processed what they'd heard. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the crowd, someone stood. Jorge Martinez. The man Damien had visited in Brooklyn. The man who'd lost his job because of decisions made in executive suites. Jorge stood, and everyone turned to look at him. I have a question, Mr. Cole. Of course. Why should we believe you? You lied about being paralyzed. You manipulated everyone. You fought your war without caring who got hurt. Why should any of us believe this isn't just another performance? It was the question everyone was thinking. Damien could have deflected, could have given a polished answer. Instead, he told the truth. You shouldn't, he said simply. You shouldn't believe me based on words. You should watch what I do. Hold me accountable. Demand transparency. And if I fail again, you should walk away knowing you gave me one more chance than I probably deserved. That's all I can offer, Jorge. Action, oversight, and accountability. No more faith based on charisma or past success. Just prove it by doing it, one day at a time. Can something truly broken ever be made whole again, or do we just build something new from the pieces? 6 months after the speech, Coal Corp was unrecognizable. Not the company itself, that was still in bankruptcy proceedings, still fighting to survive, but what it represented. The marble lobby where Damien had given his confession was now covered with construction tarps as renovations transformed the space from intimidating corporate monument to functional workspace. The executive floor had been demolished entirely, converted into an employee resource center with childcare facilities, wellness rooms, and career development offices. Damien's corner office was gone. He now worked from a desk in the open plan area, no walls, no door, visible to everyone. Some days employees walked past without acknowledging him. Other days they stopped to share ideas, complaints, questions. It was humbling and uncomfortable, and exactly what he needed. The restructuring is ahead of schedule, Sophia reported during their morning check-in at a communal table in what used to be the executive dining room. We've rehired 40% of the laid-off workforce, and the employee ownership program officially launched last week. Stock price. Still down 53% from pre-crash levels, but up 20% from the bottom. Slow recovery, but recovery. Progress. Not redemption, not victory, but actual forward movement. The new Coal Corp board met weekly, and it was unlike any board meeting Damien had ever attended. Instead of 10 wealthy men in suits rubber-stamping his decisions, the new board included 12 members. 3 employee representatives elected by their peers, 2 customer advocates, 2 community leaders from neighborhoods where Coal Corp operated, 3 investors, and 2 independent directors with expertise in corporate ethics and sustainable business. The customer satisfaction metrics are concerning, said Patricia Williams, one of the customer advocates, a former Coal Corp client who'd lost money during the bankruptcy. Response times are up, quality is down. Customers are still uncertain about working with us. That's a trust issue, Damien acknowledged. And trust is earned slowly, lost quickly. We need to overdeliver on every contract until we've proven the company is stable. That cuts into profit margins, one of the investor representatives noted. Short-term, yes. Long-term, it's the only path forward. The old Damien would have bristled at being questioned, would have dominated the conversation with force of personality. The new Damien, if he could call himself that, listened more than he spoke, acknowledged problems without defensiveness, and accepted that his opinion was one voice among 12, not the only voice that mattered. But the real work wasn't happening in boardrooms. It was happening in community centers across Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx where Coal Corp had opened retraining facilities funded by Damien's personal fortune. Jorge Martinez was there on a Thursday afternoon when Damien visited, learning advanced logistics software that would make him competitive for senior positions in the industry. Mr. Cole, Jorge said, noticing him enter. The room went quiet, about 30 former employees, all in various stages of career transition. All people Damien had failed. Please don't let me interrupt, Damien said. I just wanted to see how the program was working. An older woman, maybe 60, spoke up. It's working fine. But you know what would work better? Our job's back. Rosa, the program coordinator started, but Damien held up a hand. She's right. This program is a band-aid on a wound I helped create. It's not enough, but it's what I can do right now. As Coal Corp stabilizes, we're bringing people back. You're all on the priority rehire list. Promises, Rosa said, not unkindly. We've heard promises before. Then watch what I do, not what I say. Hold me to it. It was the same thing he'd told Jorge 6 months ago, and it would probably be what he'd have to say for years to come. Words were worthless. Only actions mattered now. The hardest moment came in week 23 of the restructuring. Marcus's defense team requested a meeting to discuss a potential plea deal that required Damien's input. They met in a conference room at the prosecutor's office, federal marshals present. Marcus in his prison jumpsuit, looking like a shell of his former self. Damien, Marcus said when they were seated across from each other, the conference table feeling like an ocean between them. Marcus. They hadn't spoken since the trial, hadn't been in the same room. Now, facing each other again, all the speeches and testimonies fell away, leaving just 2 men who'd once been brothers. My attorneys tell me you've been advocating for a reduced sentence, Marcus said. Why? Because you're going to prison either way, Damien replied. Whether it's 8 years or 20 doesn't change what happened. And destroying you completely doesn't undo the damage. Merciful of you. It's not mercy. It's acceptance. You betrayed me. I've accepted that. But I also built a company culture that taught you betrayal was acceptable if it served success. I'm responsible for that. Marcus looked down at his cuffed hands. Elena cut a deal, testified against me. She's getting 3 years. I'm looking at minimum 8 if I take the plea, maybe 15 if I go to trial and lose. Take the plea, Marcus. 8 years is a long time, but it's not forever. You're 48. You can still have a life after. What life? My reputation is destroyed. My money's frozen or spent on legal fees. Victoria left me, shocking, right? Turns out she was more interested in the lifestyle than the man. I have nothing, Damien. You took everything. I didn't take it. You gambled it and lost. The words were harsh but true. Marcus closed his eyes, processing. Do you ever wonder how we got here? We had something real once. The business was just starting. We were nobodies with a dream, working 18-hour days and loving every minute. When did that turn into this? Damien had asked himself the same question 1,000 times. When we stopped being partners and started being king and heir apparent. When I made it clear my name would always be bigger than yours, my vision more important. When I taught you that winning meant crushing everyone else. I turned our partnership into a competition, and you decided to compete. Later that evening, Damien stood on the Coal Corp rooftop. One of the few perks he'd kept, access to the building's highest point. Manhattan spread out below him, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk descended. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Board approved the community investment expansion. Your proposal passed unanimously. You did good. Good. Such a simple, inadequate word for the complicated reality of what he'd accomplished. Coal Corp wasn't thriving. It was surviving, slowly rebuilding, learning to be something different than what it had been. Damien wasn't redeemed. He was accountable, present, working daily to earn back a fraction of the trust he'd destroyed. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined 6 months ago, standing in that courtroom, watching Marcus be led away in handcuffs. He'd thought justice would feel more satisfying, that exposure and punishment would feel like victory. Instead, it felt like everyone had lost. Marcus lost his freedom and future. Damien lost his company and his certainty about who he was. Thousands of employees lost their jobs and security. And for what? To prove that betrayal had consequences? To show that power couldn't protect you from accountability? Maybe. Or maybe the real lesson was simpler. Trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired. Only slowly, painfully, partially rebuilt through actions that demonstrated change. 5 years. In business, that's an eternity. In life, it's a heartbeat. For Damien Cole, or rather for David Mercer, it had been both. The man who walked into the Palo Alto office of Mercer Technologies on a Monday morning in March 2030 looked nothing like the billionaire titan who dominated New York headlines 5 years prior. David Mercer was 49 but looked older, with a full beard graying at the edges, glasses he didn't need but wore anyway, 20 pounds lighter, and a wardrobe of jeans and startup hoodies that would have made the old Damien cringe. Mercer Technologies occupied a converted warehouse in Silicon Valley, 50 employees working on proprietary AI-driven supply chain optimization. Essentially what Coal Corp had been building before the crash, but better, smarter, and without the ethical compromises. "Morning, David," called out Jennifer, his head of engineering, a brilliant woman in her 30s who'd left Google to join his startup. "The Jensen pitch is at 2. You ready?" "Born ready," David/Damien replied with a smile that felt more genuine than any expression he'd worn during his Coal Corp years. Nobody here knew who he really was. Nobody knew about the plane crash, the betrayal, the fake paralysis, the corporate warfare. He'd buried Damien Cole deep, becoming David Mercer through legal name change, aesthetic transformation, and the simple act of letting the world forget him. But transformation, like revenge, comes with a price. That afternoon, during the pitch meeting with Jensen Capital for a Series B funding round, the lead investor leaned forward with interest. "Mercer Technologies is impressive, David. Your supply chain AI is years ahead of competitors. Tell me, what's your background? Your LinkedIn is surprisingly sparse for someone building something this sophisticated." David, had prepared for this question. Previous ventures in logistics and technology. Some successful exits, nothing headline-worthy. "I prefer to let the product speak for itself." Modest. "I respect that. But due diligence requires more detail. My team will need access to your complete work history." And there it was. The moment Damien had known would come eventually. He could provide fake references, manufacture a history, extend the deception. Or he could tell the truth and watch his new empire crumble before it was built. "Of course," he said smoothly. "I'll have my team provide everything you need." After the meeting, Sophia, who'd stayed with him through the transformation, becoming Mercer Technologies' COO, pulled him aside. "You can't keep running from who you were. Eventually, someone will recognize you. Someone will connect David Mercer to Damien Cole. Maybe that's what needs to happen," Damien said. "Maybe hiding was always temporary." Sophia pulled up an article on her laptop. Where is Damien Cole now? The disgraced tech titan who vanished after destroying his empire. The article, published in Forbes 3 months ago, speculated about his whereabouts, rumors of Thailand, Switzerland, even Antarctica. The age progression photo they'd commissioned looked remarkably like his current appearance. Mercer Technologies is worth $200 million in our current valuation, Sophia said. If investors discover you're Damian Cole, that value disappears overnight. Your history, the fake paralysis, the corporate warfare, the company that collapsed, investors will see risk, not innovation. Or they'll see someone who learned from catastrophic failure and built something better. That's optimistic. I've learned optimism. Took me 49 years and losing everything, but I learned it. That night, alone in his modest Palo Alto apartment, a far cry from his Manhattan penthouse, Damian made a decision. He opened his laptop and began typing an email that would change everything again. The email went out at midnight. Subject: The truth about David Mercer. To major tech journalists, Mercer Technologies investors, and every employee in the company. My name is David Mercer. 5 years ago, I was Damian Cole. If you're reading this, you probably remember that name and nothing good about it. Plane crash. Betrayal. Fake paralysis. Corporate implosion. 15,000 jobs lost. The whole catastrophic mess. I disappeared after Cole Corp's bankruptcy was finalized. Changed my name, changed my appearance, and started over. Mercer Technologies isn't a scam or a con. It's what I should have built the first time. A company that prioritizes innovation and ethics over ego and power. But I built it on a lie of omission, letting you believe David Mercer was someone else, someone without my history. You deserve to know who you're working with, investing in, building alongside. So here's the truth. I'm Damian Cole. I've learned from catastrophic failure, and I'm asking for a chance to prove that transformation is real. If you want to walk away from Mercer Technologies, I understand. If you want to stay and see if this time I can build something that matters, I'm grateful. Either way, no more lies. No more deception. Just me, standing in the light, accountable for who I was and who I'm trying to become. David Mercer, Damian Cole. By 8 a.m., the news had exploded. Disgraced billionaire Damian Cole revealed as Silicon Valley CEO David Mercer. Tech's biggest deception, Cole's secret comeback. Investors furious over Mercer Technologies' revelation. Damian arrived at the office to find employees clustered in groups, some angry, some confused, all staring at him as he walked to his desk. No hiding in a private office now. His glass-walled workspace meant everyone could watch his reckoning. Jennifer, his head of engineering, approached first. 5 years, she said, her voice tight. 5 years I've worked here, believed in you, turned down other offers because I thought David Mercer was building something different. And you're him? You're the guy who faked being paralyzed to spy on your own company. Yes, Damian said simply. No excuses, no justifications. Just acknowledgement. Why should I stay? Why should any of us stay? You shouldn't. Not if you can't trust me. But if you're willing to judge me by the company we've built here, by how I've treated you, by the culture we've created together, then maybe you'll decide David Mercer, even if he used to be Damian Cole, is worth working with. The all-hands meeting that afternoon was reminiscent of the Cole Corp speech 5 years ago, but everything was different. Smaller room, fewer people, and a Damian Cole who'd spent half a decade learning humility in ways no business school could teach. I know you have questions, he began. I know you're angry. You should be. I deceived you by omission, and that's not how you build trust. Damn right, someone called out. Mark from product development. You made us all accomplices to your lie. You're right. And I'm sorry. I can't undo that. What I can do is be completely transparent now and let you decide what happens next. Ask me anything. My past, my intentions, why I hid, what I'm building here. Nothing is off limits. For 2 hours, they grilled him. Why fake the paralysis? How could they trust him now? What happened to Cole Corp? Where did the Mercer Technologies funding really come from? Damian answered every question honestly, even the ones that made him look worse. He told them about Jorge Martinez and the thousands like him, about Marcus in prison, about Victoria, about standing on that rooftop 5 years ago wondering if accountability was enough or if some damage was permanent. Cole Corp taught me what not to build, Damian said toward the end. I built an empire on ruthlessness and ego. It attracted people who valued those things, and eventually they turned those values against me. Mercer Technologies was supposed to be different, built on innovation and ethics and treating people like partners. I still believe in that, even if I started with deception. 3 weeks after the revelation, 42 of Mercer Technologies' 50 employees decided to stay. 8 left, which Damien respected. Jennifer stayed, with conditions. I'm staying because the company we built matters to me, and because I believe people can change. But you're not special anymore, Damien. You're just another founder who has to earn his team's trust every single day. Deal. Deal. The investors were harder. 2 of the 3 lead firms pulled their commitments, citing reputation risk and fiduciary concerns. The third, Jensen Capital, increased their investment instead. You know what impresses me? The Jensen managing partner told Damien. You didn't have to confess. You could have kept the secret, taken our money, built the company, and maybe gotten away with it. Choosing transparency when deception was easier. That's the leadership quality we invest in. Mercer Technologies moved forward, smaller than planned but standing on authentic foundation this time. The company grew slowly but steadily, attracting talent who believed in second chances and building something meaningful rather than just chasing unicorn valuations. And Damien Cole, who sometimes still answered to David Mercer, finally understood what success actually meant. Not billions in valuation or headlines celebrating genius, but building something sustainable with people who trusted you because you'd earned it, not because you'd demanded it. 5 years and 6 months after the plane crash, Damien returned to New York for the first time. Not for business, but because Cole Corp, the original company restructured and rebuilt under employee ownership, had invited him to a ceremony marking its emergence from bankruptcy. He almost declined. What right did he have to celebrate a company he'd nearly destroyed? But Sophia convinced him. They're not inviting the old Damien Cole. They're inviting the person you became after everything fell apart. That's worth honoring. The ceremony was held in the rebuilt lobby, now warm and accessible instead of intimidating. 800 employees attended, including Jorge Martinez, now back as a senior logistics director with equity stake in the company. When Jorge saw Damien in the crowd, he approached, not with hostility but with measured acknowledgement. Mr. Cole. Or is it Mercer now? Either works. How are you, Jorge? How's Maria? The kids? We're good. Better than 5 years ago. The company's different now. Better too. Smaller, more careful, but real. They stood awkwardly for a moment. 2 men connected by disaster and its aftermath. I'm sorry, Damien said. I know I've said it before, but you paid for my kid's surgery, Jorge interrupted. Through that fund you set up. You didn't have to. You were already gone, already starting over. But you did. So thank you. And you're forgiven. Not forgotten, but forgiven. There's a difference. That evening, Damien stood on another rooftop. Not in Manhattan, but in Palo Alto, watching Silicon Valley light up as the sun set. Sophia stood beside him, comfortable silence between them. Do you miss it? She asked. The empire? The power? Sometimes, Damien admitted. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. But I don't miss who I was when I had it. That Damien Cole was brilliant and ruthless and completely hollow. David Mercer is smaller, less impressive, more accountable. But he's real. Is David Mercer still hiding? Or did you actually become someone new? It was the question Damien asked himself daily. Was transformation real? Or was he just playing another long game, waiting for everyone to forget so he could reclaim his old life? I think, Damien said slowly, that Damien Cole and David Mercer are the same person at different points in their understanding of what matters. Cole thought power protected him. Mercer knows it doesn't. Cole thought winning meant crushing everyone else. Mercer knows it means building something sustainable with people who share the vision. Cole died in that plane crash, not literally but metaphorically. Mercer is who crawled out of the wreckage. Sophia smiled. That's either profound or the biggest line of bullshit I've ever heard. Maybe both. His phone buzzed. Hey. Message from Jennifer. Close the Jensen deal. We did it. Team did it. Not I did it. Not you did it. Team. Collective success built on mutual trust and shared effort. The old Damien would have needed to be the hero, the singular genius making it happen. The new Damien, David, whoever he was becoming, understood that being part of something was more valuable than being everything. 3 years later, Damien stood on a stage at a technology conference in Austin, not as David Mercer hiding from his past, but as Damien Cole who'd learned from it. The conference organizers had titled his talk, The Cost of Trust, Lessons from Losing Everything. He stood before 5,000 entrepreneurs, investors, and students, and told them the whole story. The crash, the betrayal, the fake paralysis, the revenge, the destruction, the rebuilding, the transformation. And finally, the truth. I spent 20 years building an empire based on power. Dam ended his speech. It took one plane crash and 5 years of rebuilding to learn that trust is the only foundation that actually holds. Power can be stolen. Money can be lost. Empires can collapse. But trust, earned honestly and maintained through accountability, creates something sustainable. My name is Damian Cole. I destroyed a $10 billion company because I cared more about being right than about the people who built it with me. I faked paralysis to catch my betrayers, and in doing so, betrayed everyone else. I've spent years trying to rebuild, not the empire, but myself. And the most important lesson I learned. He paused, looking out at the audience. Pretending to be powerless didn't cost me my empire. Trust did. But learning to be trustworthy gave me something more valuable than empire ever could: authenticity. The audience stood applauding. Not for his success, but for his honesty. As Damian walked off stage, his phone showed messages from Jorge Martinez. Watched your talk. Proud of you. From Jennifer. Boss, you actually did it. You changed. From Marcus Webb, out of prison after 7 years and rebuilding his own life. I saw the talk. Thank you for including my part in your story. Not as villain, but as someone who made choices and faced consequences. Maybe we can talk sometime. Not as friends, that's gone. But as two people who learned hard lessons. And from Sophia, always, you did good. Now come home. Mercer Tech board meeting tomorrow. The work continues. Damian Cole closed his eyes, standing in the quiet backstage area, and felt something he hadn't experienced in a decade: peace. Damian Cole never reclaimed his original empire. Cole Corp survived under employee ownership, smaller but sustainable, employing 8,000 people with democratic governance structures. Mercer Technologies grew into a mid-sized success, valued at $500 million. Comfortable but not spectacular. Marcus Webb served 7 years in federal prison, was released in 2032, and now runs a consultancy helping companies implement ethical corporate governance. He and Damian exchange emails occasionally. Not friendship, but acknowledgement. Jorge Martinez became a vice president at the restructured Cole Corp. His children graduated college, and he never forgot the day a billionaire showed up at his apartment to apologize. And Damian Cole learned that the greatest wealth isn't billions in valuation. It's being able to look in the mirror and recognize yourself, to sleep without nightmares of betrayal, to build something that serves others rather than just your ego. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what actually matters. This story isn't just about corporate betrayal. It's about every choice we make between power and integrity, between winning and being worthy, between empire and authenticity. What would you do if you had to choose between revenge and redemption? Drop your answer in the comments below. And smash that subscribe button and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because maybe the most powerful thing we can do isn't build empires. It's learn from our failures and become someone worthy of trust. Thank you for taking this journey with Damian Cole. May you never have to lose everything to discover what really matters.